Hey everyone, welcome to BSR Sports Talk on BostonSportsRadio.net. I'm Ashish Sharma here with Brian Roach, and we are breaking down Sunday Night Football, the big showdown between the Patriots and the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of people are calling a potential Super Bowl preview. Brian, this was a pretty awesome game. Obviously didn't start off that way, but down near the stretch there, it became one of the games of the year, I think.
Yeah, I would say it was probably the best game, well, maybe the best game of the year for the Patriots, going back and coming back down from that big deficit. And sure, in the end, it didn't turn out that great, but what can you do?
Right, exactly. I remember going into this game, I think this, aside from the Houston game on Monday Night Football, I thought these were the two biggest games on their schedule considering their opponents. The best team in the AFC, and then the very next week, the best team in the NFC. And both potential title games. Obviously one is the Super Bowl and one is the AFC Championship game, possibly if they do end up getting that 2 seed, which we will talk about. But the first half was obviously a total disaster. The Patriots managed less than 3 points in the first half, or something like that. I have to double check, but I know
They only managed 3 points, yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at the drive chart, and the first few possessions that the Patriots had, I think they had 5 possessions in the first quarter itself. They went something like this: punt, interception, punt, fumble, and then finally a field goal in the second quarter before punting and then fumbling and then throwing another interception. So total disaster offensively. Meanwhile, total disaster defensively as well, because the Niners are happily going down the field scoring a touchdown, and then there was a punt and a fumble and then a missed field goal, but they were putting up points, another field goal, another touchdown. Very slippery on this field a couple of days ago. We were seeing a lot of fumbles. I think we saw some from Kaepernick, one from Ridley, one from Vereen. So one of those football games that was really determined by the elements there.
Yeah, I believe the San Francisco 49ers had 6 fumbles, but only
Yeah.
lost one of them. And one of them happened to be the one where Frank Gore scored. So
Right.
that was unfortunate, but
That was
the
a very interesting play.
yeah, the Patriots were able to limit the damage though, only limited it to 17-3 at the half. So it wasn't as if as the announcers were saying, it was like everything was going the 49ers way, except they
Hmm.
couldn't score the ball.
Yeah, except for, yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought up the Frank Gore score, because it was almost like it was done by design. I mean, you look at the way that Kaepernick botched that snap there, and it just seemed to be an issue for him the whole time. I think that's why Harbaugh had him go more into the shotgun later in the game. But Frank Gore didn't panic. He just picked it up and he waltzed right into the end zone. And I just thought to myself, are you kidding me? How is everything going the way of the 49ers? And, part of me kind of felt like, Brady and Belichick, they're veterans. They know what they're going to do. They're going to make some adjustments in the second half. And they really came out and they did, because Brady had a very uncharacteristic first half, throwing 2 interceptions. Let's see. On the third possession that the Patriots had, he threw an interception. And I'm sorry, the second interception that he threw actually happened in the second quarter, or third quarter, rather. And that was the one that he threw to Hernandez that got flipped up to Aldon Smith. So,
Yeah.
um, so obviously a tough game for Brady in the first half, but the second half was a totally different story for him.
Well, at least after the first 2 touchdowns were scored by the 49ers, but
Right.
that was all Kaepernick and everything like that. But so they were down 31-3, and then they backed off a little bit.
Right. I think it's fair to say that, teams kind of get a little relaxed after they put up such a big deficit. 31-3, even the Patriots, they say, you shouldn't run up the score. Teams are, look at what happened. I don't think anyone's going to be complaining about that anymore, because they didn't really run up the score after 31-3. They kind of got a little relaxed there, started running the ball as they should, to run up the clock. And the Patriots just come back, and let's see here. Starting in the third quarter, they rattled off 4 straight touchdowns. Touchdown in the
Yep.
third quarter, 422 at the 422 mark in the third quarter. They followed that up with 341 in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, they came back down with 2 more touchdowns, 1 minute in and then 3 minutes in. So they very quickly made it a game and tied it at 31. And if the special teams hadn't broken down on that second to last kickoff for the Patriots, in which they allowed the ball to come back to midfield, maybe it would have been a different story.
Yeah, I actually think that was well. Besides, it was it was the second to last one because the last one was the one by Gostowski, the onside kick.
Yep.
Because the field goal that happened was because Brady went for it on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2, um, and Woodhead like ran 8 yards up the field when they needed like 2 yards, and so that I think that was the play that really decided it. The 4th and 2 on their own like 8 yard line or like 15 yard line, something around there. So
Right. And I think that's actually a perfect segue to the next thing I wanted to talk about was Danny Woodhead and how he just continues to just be fantastic for this team coming through. I don't know why he doesn't get as many snaps as he was earlier in the season. He's third on the depth chart behind Ridley and what's his name, Vereen. And once Bolden comes back, I think he'll stay at third, and Vereen will drop down to fourth because this guy is an all-purpose back. He does everything. He can give you yards receiving. He could give you yards rushing. He had something like 90 all-purpose yards. Let's see. He had 12 carries for 61 yards, and he had 5 receptions for 23. There you go. And he just keeps bailing you out in big situations, fourth down situations, third down situations. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. So I really don't think that he's getting the credit he deserves. He's been doing everything for this team this year.
yeah, well, I think once Ridley had that second fumble, I think Bill Belichick had enough and benched him. And next game, you'll see Ridley as the top running back again, and especially against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who aren't that good against the run or the pass. So you'll see Ridley ramping it up because he was on pace for like 1,300 yards, but now he's on pace for a little less than that. But
Right.
we shall
Right.
see.
Right, that's something we've actually been talking about all year is the inconsistency of Ridley, and I think part of it is just that he can't take care of the football. That was a problem at the tail end of last year where he had that goal line fumble and then another one. I think he had 2 or 3 last year, and then this year he's obviously had the issues with holding on to the football. But, it's not at a point now where you can just completely yank him because he gives you that option out of the backfield to run the football. And as you know, you really can't set the tempo offensively if you can't run the football effectively. It sets up the pass. So that makes it all the more impressive that the Patriots offense was able to get back in this game when they weren't running it effectively out. They had to ditch the run partially because of what was going on with the football and the fumbles. And also the second part of that was, look at the deficit that they were facing at the time. 31-3. Running the ball is not an option.
Yeah, Ridley, I think he scored in 5 or maybe 6 straight games before last night, where he only had 23 yards. Oh, well, not last night, Sunday night. 23 yards and not a touchdown. He had 1 chance to score a touchdown, and he made it to like the half-yard line. So.
Right. No, it'll be interesting to see how Belichick handles Bolden coming back next week. Now, with this loss against the San Francisco 49ers, the Patriots actually slipped to third in the conference behind Houston, who has the first seed. Denver has the second seed. Denver has an easy schedule ahead of them. Do you know who they're playing? They're playing the Browns at home, I believe. Right.
Yeah, and then the Chiefs. And then they play the Chiefs.
Okay, and then the Patriots, as we just mentioned, have the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville next week, and then they're wrapping up the season with Miami at home. So both teams have winnable, sets of games ahead of them. So now that leads the question: should they kind of concede that second seed and maybe manufacture a sort of a bye of their own in Week 17 by sitting Brady, sitting Welker, sitting Hernandez, guys like that, or should they just go out there with their starters and obviously win in Jacksonville, win in Miami, and just hope that Denver slips up and loses one of these next 2 games? And in which case, if that happens and the Patriots win out, they'll leapfrog Denver and take back the second seed.
Yeah, maybe Denver decides to bench some guys maybe the last week or something because it's against Kansas City, and Kansas City doesn't have a good quarterback, doesn't really have that sort of offensive threat that could threaten them even if they do put in their backup. But what I see the Patriots doing is maybe like playing the first next week and then half of the next week. Maybe like bench them the second half. It depends on how their league is and stuff like that.
Right. No. I think if you ask my opinion, I think you just have to play your starters and just you don't want to be put in a position where you drop one of the games because you rested guys, and then you find out that Denver also dropped one of their games. Because in my eyes, these are two very winnable games. I mean, Jacksonville, it doesn't matter that it's on the road, and Miami at home. Miami has always in this decade struggled in New England, especially this late in the season. So it's obviously something to think about, and it's not really Belichick's nature to sit guys. I mean, you remember what happened Week 17 a couple years ago. They played Welker, and he ended up tearing his ACL, which was unfortunate, but he still played his starters. 2007, when they had locked up the first-round bye, home field, everything by like Week 12, he still played everyone. He played Moss. He played Brady in 07. So it's not really Belichick's nature to do that type of thing, so I wouldn't expect it, but we'll see what happens. I do think that he will play them. But one thing that I do want to move on other than that is this game. The way Tom Brady played in the second half, this game overall, does this hurt his MVP chances? Does it help his MVP chances, or is it about the same? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not going off of this game. I'm going after the game that Adrian Peterson had, 212 yards, a touchdown. The way he performed and how he's been performing lately, like I think he had 100 yards once in the first like 3-4 games, something like that, and he's now done it like 6-7 straight games, so or even more than that. I think it was like once or twice in the first 3 to 6 games, something like that, where he had 100 yards, and now he's starting to like really tear it up, and he's trying to push for the Vikings to get into the playoffs because they're still in it. They could maybe pull off one of those wild card spots, but that's who I see as the MVP. I mean, sure, Peyton Manning, but
Right. No, I agree with you. I think it's a 3-horse race right now, but I think with this past game for the Patriots, if Brady absolutely went off and they won this game and they completed the comeback, I'd still put him ahead of Peyton Manning and Adrian Peterson. But I think right now, if the Vikings do make the playoffs, it's got to be Adrian Peterson. I mean, you look at what he's about to do. He's about to break 2,000 yards. He's on pace to break the record for most yards in a season for a running back. So right now, I would put Adrian Peterson slightly ahead of the latter two. But if you ask me if this helped Brady's chances, I'd say yeah, kind of. I mean, they lost the game, and he had a really bad first half. But the way he led his team back and got them back to 31-all in the third quarter, or actually, sorry, the fourth. That was a mind-boggling comeback. And if they had finished that comeback and won it, I mean, Brady had 443 yards passing. Now, yes, he threw the ball 65 times and had 2 interceptions with just 1 touchdown. But without him, they don't have a chance at coming back in that game, which is my logic to, why maybe he might get the award. But it'll be interesting to see because it is a 3-horse race at this point, and I think Adrian Peterson has the slight advantage over both quarterbacks that are being mentioned. So.
Yeah, especially since he tore his ACL last year and came back early from it, and so he is like renewed strength or something. I don't know who to pick for comeback player of the year either.
I think Adrian Peterson is my comeback player of the year because as amazing as Peyton Manning's comeback is, they said you may never play football again, and with the multiple surgeries and things like that, I think he's totally deserving of that award, and he's still deserving of MVP. I mean, all 3 of these guys are, but I just think that as a running back, you make your living with your knees, and an ACL isn't a joke. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Peyton Manning, but when you see what Adrian Peterson has been able to do as a running back, in which you're pretty much on your own as a running back. I mean, you're relying on your blockers, but you're pretty much on your own. And if he can break 2,000 yards and get his team into the playoffs, it's absolutely him as an MVP and as comeback player of the year. But, we'll see what Brady's able to do if he can pick apart these last 2 teams here. If Adrian Peterson slows down a little bit, if the Broncos lose one, it really is up to the sports writers to see which of these guys it is. But one guy that we're not even mentioning at all so far in this game who actually had quite an outstanding game is Colin Kaepernick. I remember a few weeks ago I was kind of looking at what was going on with San Francisco with Jim Harbaugh saying, Alex Smith was concussed, so we're going to go with Colin Kaepernick, and now I'm going to make this kid my starter. At first, that was a little bit of a head scratcher. I said, well, why are you messing with something that's working? I think both you and I, after we saw Colin Kaepernick firsthand on Sunday Night Football, I think now we understand why he made that change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he didn't run for much. I think he only ran for less than 50 yards, was it? Something like that.
Colin Kaepernick on the ground, I don't have that stat in front of me, but he is a threat to run. Hang on, let me see here.
Let's see. Oh, rushing 7 for 28.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he threw for 216, 4 touchdowns, that 1 interception. He had 14 completions for 216 yards. I mean, a couple of the plays the Patriots really botched. The 2 Michael Crabtree touchdowns were both one play is that Kyle Arrington completely whiffed on, and the other one where he just had made a really nice catch in between two I think safeties.
Right. Yeah. No. Colin Kaepernick really impressed me. I mean, I think he's the real deal. I think he's got more upside than Alex Smith. Because I remember Chris Collinsworth saying that this is not the kid that they envision taking them to the playoffs. Not right now. It's about what he could be, and that's a lot more. Now, again, we don't know if this is just Colin Kaepernick, as he is and what he's going to be, or is it just that defenses haven't figured him out yet? Maybe they don't have that much film on him yet. Maybe he's very talented, but once they figure him out, he's not going to be as much of a threat as he was, these past few games that he has been starting for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, we shall see, as it progresses, what is going to happen, but
yeah,
I think he'll be a very good quarterback in the future. I mean, that it all depends on what happens with Alex Smith, but
yeah. Hey, you know what? I think the Jets need a quarterback, so we'll see what happens there. Now, I just want to quickly touch on Devin McCourty. He had that key interception you were talking about. Now, D-Mac, since he made the switch and essentially took Patrick Chung's job, I think this has been a fantastic change for him because he has 5 interceptions on the year. I believe 2 of those or 3 came as a cornerback. But recently he's been fantastic. Hasn't he been a lot better?
Yeah, I like him at the safety because, as I've said before, when he sees the ball, that's when he's good. And safeties look at the ball, and cornerbacks try to turn around to see the ball as they're covering the receiver. So
he was just getting beat as a corner in man constantly. And I just think when he's back as a safety, as a free safety, and it allows him to roam and just kind of allow the play to develop and provide help over the top, he's a different player. I think if he had started this season at the position he's playing right now, I think he has a shot at the Pro Bowl. He's got 5 interceptions in a year that we're considering has been bad for him. Now, obviously, interceptions don't tell the whole story. It's not the be-all, end-all. I mean, he's still giving up a lot of yardage as a defensive back, but we've seen a pretty drastic improvement here with Devin McCourty after the position change. And again, as we talked about a couple shows ago, hope maybe this is kind of phasing Patrick Chung out of things and hopefully, out the door, because I love Patrick Chung, but he just hasn't really panned out and become that superstar strong safety that we thought he was going to be. So now they have Steve Gregory in at strong safety, and they have Devin McCourty out at free. And, it just looks like the pass defense, although still very, very shaky, has been a little bit better.
Yeah, I've noticed some, good tipped passes and stuff like that, and good covering of the wide receivers, tight ends. But what really is hurt is sometimes the defensive pass interference calls. There was one against, the San Francisco 49ers that helped Pats when Lloyd broke free. But it was, I think this defense can improve some, but, I mean, they're good enough to somewhat defend decent quarterbacks. I don't know how they'll do against Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, actually. But, you just saw them play against back-to-back good quarterbacks. I'm not about to put Colin Kaepernick in the same group as, Matt Schaub, but from how he's been playing recently, he was pretty good. So it'll obviously be interesting to see how this team is tested defensively with regards to the pass. But before we sign off from this edition, I do want to quickly touch on Brandon Lloyd, who had probably the greatest game, not even of his Patriots career. This could probably be the greatest game of his career. He almost logged 200 yards receiving in this game. What was it, 10 for 190?
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely phenomenal. And this is a guy that we were actually getting on for kind of not being the guy that we signed in the offseason, as to be this vertical threat.
The last 2 weeks, since Edelman and Gronkowski are all out, last week he had two touchdowns. One was a fluke touchdown where he recovered it in the end zone, but this past week he was targeted, I think, 17 times. So
yeah, because
maybe even more. Yeah,
right. In Miami, he had just one reception for 10 yards. So I think he's finally gotten a little bit more comfortable with this offense and is finally finding his role. Yeah, he's sort of that guy that has the ability to run outside the numbers, but he's more of a medium depth route runner, has fantastic acrobatic skills in terms of making sideline catches. I mean, I'm still impressed with what he's able to do in terms of contorting his body and keeping his feet in bounds when making difficult catches. So he's impressed me lately, and I'm hoping that this, now all of a sudden this resurgence of Brandon Lloyd, so to speak, with Aaron Hernandez, Gronk will be coming back, Welker's still here. I'm hoping that, now Julian Edelman's on IR, so I think he's still going to get more touches now. Going into the playoffs, I'm not worried about this offense at all. It's the defense that I'm keeping my eye on. And even then, we just talked about, although they're still pretty crappy, they are getting a little bit better day by day, week by week. So we'll see what happens. Like we said when we started this show for today, this was a Super Bowl preview, and I stand by that. I think this absolutely could end up being the Super Bowl that we see this year. I think New England, yes, they lost this week. I think they can run the table through the AFC, and I think that San Francisco can as well. So do you think that this is the matchup we see in the big game?
I actually think Seattle, the way their defense is playing right now, Seattle and New England, Russell Wilson is being phenomenal out there in Seattle, even better than when he faced the Patriots, because now he's running the ball. He had 3 rushing touchdowns last week, I believe. I believe
so, yeah.
And their defense, even without their cornerbacks, Sherman, is facing that his appeal on Friday, so we'll see if I think he'll still be in the Super Bowl, because I think he'll miss 1, 2, then 3, 4 weeks, and Super Bowl if the Seattle Seahawks can somehow win the division by beating the 49ers next week. So
that would be interesting. Yeah, we haven't seen the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl since they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers a few years ago, so that would certainly be interesting. A lot of great young quarterbacks in the game today. Obviously, RG3 and Andrew Luck. Now, Colin Kaepernick, Russell Wilson. So I think it's good. It's a good time to be a football fan, even outside of your own team. So I think we still have a lot of great football ahead of us. The season's winding down. We'll see how this affects the playoff picture, but a lot to be excited about. So we'll see what happens with that. And with that pretty much wraps up this edition of BostonSportsRadio.net. Brian, thanks a lot. I think we'll be back next week breaking down the Pats-Jaguars. Hopefully that'll be a bounce-back win for New England, and then they can hopefully close out with another win at home against Miami to hopefully take back the 2 seed from Denver. But we'll see what happens there. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week. Take care.